Celtic influence on English. The Celts were a European cultural group who were first evident in the 7th or 8th century BC. The Celts are what historians would call barbarian. They were agrarian, nature-based, and ritualistic people that lived in small primitive settlements. They were very skilled at war. Their maximum expansion was in the 3rd to 5th century BC, where they occupied much of Europe north of the Alps. They displaced an earlier people who were already on the islands. The Gaels, Gauls, Britons, Irish, and Galatians were all Celtic people. Although Celtic culture isn't so prevalent in Europe anymore, it can still be found in these areas. After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes migrated westward. Gaul and Brittany were also conquered by Germanic tribes after the fall of Rome. The first Germanic tribes were invited to Britain by a Celtic king to defend part of the island in 430 AD. However, those tribes soon turned on the Celts and began taking over. The Celts were slowly pushed to western England, Wales, and Cornwall. When the Anglo-Saxons conquered the Celts, their language, Old English, became the language of education and government, and continued to be so until about 1066 AD. Because of the lack of constant interaction between the Anglo-Saxons and Celts, the two languages stayed isolated and didn't influence each other much. Still, there are theories that what really happened was that many Anglo-Saxons and Celts intermarried, and the language was in fact influenced by Celtic. With what we know for sure now, Celtic influence on English is very minimal. We don't borrow much vocabulary at all from Celtic. Still, some of English's core grammar comes from Celtic. The presence of a continuous tense, like the suffix ing, comes from Celtic. The meaningless do also comes from Celtic. And thirdly, many place names come from Celtic as well. English is very different from its Germanic relatives with its use of the continuous tense. Instead of saying I am coming in English, you would say something like I come. Also, English is unique in its use of the meaningless do. In English you would say do you like ice cream, but in other Germanic languages you would simply say you like ice cream. This theory isn't accepted everywhere though. People argue that the first thing that languages adopt is vocabulary. So how did English not gain any vocabulary from Celtic, yet made some pretty core grammatical changes? Overall, it's generally believed that Celtic didn't influence English very much, but there are still theories that Celtic influenced English more than just a few place names and some grammar, and a definite answer to this question cannot be given just yet.